while there have been while there have been incredible changes that have taken place that are visible, particularly when it comes to environmental awareness, or when it comes to taking on policies, embracing policies about use of public space, and being able to, have more greenways and parkways, not parkways, but being able to have more greenways and being able to have more places for people to access the waterfront and bicycle lanes, and more of an understanding and appreciation of environmental impacts. We've certainly seen a lot more of that. We've seen great successes on the part of many grassroots community organizations, environmental groups, and others who've been able to push that as an agenda and to find it being accepted within City Hall and within the state and within the federal government. But we've still seen that the same context is still there. The context being that everything is still up for sale, that the goods go to those who have the greatest amount of money to pay. And so even with something as, to me personally, I find the High Line is, it's a great example of a great use of space, of public space, on the waterfront. It's a nice area for people to walk through. I've gone out there plenty of times before. But at the same time, it also shows the great disparity between wealthy communities and poor and working class communities, where you've got this incredible piece of infrastructure, this great new parkland that was created, but primarily made possible because it was done with private dollars, and the city is still subsidizing it, to a greater extent than it subsidizes similar projects in communities like the South Bronx or in South Brooklyn. So there are lots of examples of that, all over the city. So on the one hand, we've got an incredible a sea change compared to the Giuliani administration that is really embracing public space. But at the same time, it's still primarily done within the context of public space for those who need it least, actually. So that's a piece of it. We pride ourselves as New Yorkers on the fact that things are always changing in New York, that life is very dynamic, and this isn't the same city that it was, say, 10 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. At the same time, and the change is embraced, and we're fans of change. Change is very much a part of life. The type of change that happens, though, isn't a change that benefits all. And the kinds of changes that lots of different communities want isn't necessarily the kinds of changes that we get. We haven't seen any dramatic changes in our educational systems. We haven't seen dramatic changes in our healthcare system. The things that really guide our life and that people rely on. We haven't seen dramatic changes in those things. We've seen dramatic changes in the look of real estate, and that's purely driven by the real estate market. We've seen dramatic changes in the looks of things, but those are very superficial kinds of changes. So real change, isn't something that I'd say we really seen a lot of. When we talk about how we actually get things done, how we put food on our table, how we provide services to people, how businesses are created, there's plenty of room for innovation and creating something different. I'm not an architect. I'm not an architect or designer by profession of any sorts. I have never taken any kind of an architecture class, and I don't know what the current policies are or the standards that are used right now at the Department of City Planning or anywhere else in the city regarding how they judge who's the best architect and for what project. I do know that there are a number of public spaces that have been created, park projects that have happened, greenway projects that have happened, where there is, I can see just as a user, as an observer, that there's a great attention to detail that has been put into place. And to me, when I see it, I look at Barretto Point Park here in Hunts Point, or Hunts Point Riverside Park, also in Hunts Point, or the former concrete plant that was turned into a park on the Bronx River. I look at those places, all of which were created as a result of communities, all of us who were part of the community saying, you know, we want these things to be created. Those things, they're beautiful, and you know, I love them, and other people in the community, we all love them, and we like to see it there and want to see more of that. For us, we see it as, you know, this is the kind of thing that, you know, communities that are wealthier, say in Manhattan, the east side of Manhattan or west side of Manhattan or Midtown, have been privy to, that now we get to get. So I don't know if the architects are different, you know, if there are different standards now. I don't know if you know, people have been moved around, or if there's just, you know, maybe it's something new that's going on across the board. But certainly for all of us, we've seen a great deal of attention being placed on some public spaces in other parts of the city, and we're starting to now see that here in our communities. I would say the successes of Bloomberg administration have been, to some degree, raising the awareness, appreciation, and accepting many demands that the environmental movement has put out there. And so there's been an embrace of redesigning public spaces to accommodate bicycles and pedestrians. There has been an effort to plant trees around the city. There's been a great deal of attention on creating opportunities to create alternative sources of energy, and to redesign or make it easier for people to be able to adopt green building construction practices in their buildings or homes, commercial businesses or others. So those things have been positive that I've seen. You know, there's more opportunity for that now. There's a green building law that allows for greater incentives and opportunities for people to construct green buildings in the city. The downsides, I'd say, of the city policies is that some of the environmental initiatives are short-sighted, or I would say, you know, this is kind of the problem for anybody. You know, someone says, you know, you start an initiative, so the city started an initiative. It's certainly not perfect, and there are some big holes in it. You know, the biggest hole, you know, I would say the largest hole in the city's Plan NYC initiative is that it doesn't address waste at all, period. There's no attempt to really address how the city moves waste, and not just how it moves the waste, but the fact that we generate so much waste. There's 50,000 tons a day of waste, of material that's being generated that's perfectly good. The very first business, first cooperative that we started, was dedicated to finding an alternative use for waste and not treating it as waste anymore. It's called Rebuilder Source, and they're dedicated to diverting material that would otherwise have been trashed, putting it back into people's homes. So keeping a door as a door, making it available for someone who wants a door that's a lot less than what they would pay at a Home Depot or some other home improvement store. So there are opportunities like that that exist that the city's not taking advantage of. So the city is just treating waste as a given, that it'll always be there, and we just have to figure out a way on how to move it, instead of flipping it around and saying, you know, really creating a different kind of environment, saying, what would the city look like without waste? What would we have to have in place in order to get to a point where nothing is really wasted, where we actually do have a city that operates organically the way nature does, where nothing is really nothing is really thrown away because everything is being used by some other part of the city or some other part of life. So that's what we're looking to have happen with Rebuilder Source and others that come after it. I think that in the future, say 25 or 50 years from now, people will look back and they'll either love us, hate us, or think absolutely nothing of us. If they love us, it'll be because we will have proved ourselves in this age, in these next few years, to be brilliant visionaries who acted on our vision and made possible what people before thought was impossible. You know, the same way we look back 100 years in the past and say, and put up museum exhibits galore on who were the brilliant people who decided to build a subway system. You know, so maybe in 25, 50 years from now, our kids and their kids will look back at us with the same kind of fondness, admiration, and wonder. Or they may look back on us and say, well, who were those idiots who just sat on their butts, you know, and did nothing during that time when everybody was talking about going green, and then either nothing happened or it happened 5 states away or 2 countries over. You know, why didn't they act on it? And then they'll be thinking about us the same way, you know, people think about everybody in the 70s who didn't do much after the first oil shocks. You know, and you know, there were a few people, a few hippies who you know, converted their cars to run on vegetable oil, and there was a counterculture movement, and then it fizzled, you know, it fizzled away. And people will look back on us now the way we look back on that period and say, well, why didn't anything happen? You know, or they just won't think about us at all, which all just means that we didn't do anything. And maybe they moved away to some other city and they went to some other place where somebody was doing something that they thought we should have been doing.